You're listening to the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski,
featuring attorney, guest, and former felony prosecutor Eric Faddis.
Family of Cynthia Dawn Kinney, they want closure. They are old. Their daughter died back in 1976. They want to see whoever took their daughter behind bars and facing the consequences for their actions. There has been a lot of interest in Dennis Rader possibly being the one that is responsible. No body has ever been found, though. But there is a lot of evidence from BTK's writings that he was in the area at the time and fantasized about doing pretty much what would be suspected of what could have happened based on his writings to Cynthia Dawn Kinney. Do you think we're going to find something here? Is there a solid link? There's been some issues between the DA and the sheriff of Osage County. What's been your observations on this?
Yeah, these cold cases, as we know, are always super tough. Evidence erodes, witnesses are lost or die or what have you, and it becomes a lot harder to prove the case. One thing that jumped out to me is there appears to be a difference of opinion between the sheriff's office that investigated and the district attorney in that jurisdiction. The sheriff's office is saying, hey, BTK is the prime suspect for this, whereas the DA's office is saying, whoa, slow down. We don't have enough information to make that determination. And they're sort of quarreling back and forth. And it's just not the best look. We need a unified front in law enforcement, especially when we're talking about pursuing a serial killer and this cold case murder. And we don't have that right now.
What do you think we have going on here right now, in all honesty, specifically when we're talking about Sheriff Eddie Virden? I think it's wonderful that somebody has passion and they want to go out and try and solve this case, but we also have to do it professionally, and we can't throw our emotion behind that actual investigation. And there's a lot of concerns about how things have been done from an attorney standpoint. I'm curious to get your opinion on this. Concerns about how the evidence was gathered by the Osage County Sheriff, especially since the sheriff's office went outside of their own jurisdiction, the validity and legitimacy of the search warrants obtained, the affidavit supporting it, and the authority of the Osage County Sheriff's Office in gathering evidence from outside their own jurisdiction. Also concerns, big concerns, should they actually try and bring charges against Dennis Rader.
Totally. Law enforcement so often really wants to get justice for these victims, and sometimes they're so zealous and they're so passionate about it that they can make mistakes. They can overstep their bounds. And to a law enforcement officer, they don't always see how that plays out in the courts years later. Oftentimes these small mistakes can be a linchpin for these cases to be dismissed once they get into the court system. And I think that's part of potentially the DA's pushback in naming BTK as the prime suspect. I think the DA needs to review all of that evidence collection, ensure that it was by the book, that there were no constitutional violations. And I'm not sure that's happened yet. And so I think the DA is trying to be a lot more measured in their approach to this, whereas the sheriff's office is saying, hey, let's go. We think we got him. But I think you need kind of a balance of both of those approaches, because you need to preserve and secure any conviction and make sure that it's not overturned on appeal due to some impropriety by law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, both can be have the same goal, but at the same point, both can destroy each other as well if they don't play by the rules and don't get too zealous here in trying to jump ahead when there isn't something there to jump ahead with.
You're consuming the Hidden Killers podcast.
Want more? Start binging on all of our true crime podcasts right now through Apple Podcasts, and get an ad-free experience when you sign up to be a True Crime Today Premium Plus member, exclusively on Apple Podcasts.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast, dropping soon.
Press subscribe now.